Right, so that was earlier on Business Morning today. But right now, we're going to be looking at some economic data for the month of October. Central Bank of Nigeria's October Business Expectation Survey, you can call it BES, showed a decline in overall confidence index, OCI. The OCI fell to 14.5 points from 17.7 points in September, indicating a dip in optimism among businesses operating in the country. Also, Nigeria's Purchasing Managers Index as a PMI, that dipped to 49.6 index points in October 2024. That's according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then the Stanbic IBTC Bank Nigeria PMI for October shows how we see output that fell at the fastest pace in 19 months. As Nigeria's private sector activity that worsened further in October, that's according to the Stanbic IBTC PMI. The headline PMI settled at a 19-month low of 46.9 points from 49.8 points in September. Well, joining us now to analyze most of this data, we have Dr. Olusegun Omishakin, is the Chief Economist, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Join me right here in the studio. It's great to have you.
Yes, too. Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely, I can imagine looking at all of this data, it can somehow dampen your economic spirit.
Yes.
And your spirit generally.
Yes.
You know, at this point, we see the businesses not expecting so much goodies.
Yeah.
Consumers are expecting higher prices.
Yeah.
And I know it's not good when consumers believe prices will continue to go up. And it seems like I've been reporting inflation for so long now in Nigeria, and I'm getting used to it at this point. The prices are going to keep going up.
Yeah.
How are you seeing all of this data?
Yeah. Well, you've said it all. Well, let's ask this question. Let's look at the environment within which the businesses are operating in Nigeria, because to a very large extent that determines what we're going to see in terms of their performances and expectations. So there are critical frameworks. The first one is the macroeconomic environment. So this is the performance of the macroeconomy, or the stability in the macro level determines or signals whatever information you're going to get from the businesses. And we can conclude that we are seeing at a very turbulent state now. We have key indicators. Let's just mention two. Inflation, you've mentioned that, and interest rate environment, very, very out of control, if I may put it that way. The second framework is what I call the consumer or the household sector. This is like the micro sector. You've also mentioned that if the aggregate demand is every day's weakness coming down, you will expect that impact on businesses. People have to reallocate their resources into something else, maybe more now into food, or kind of have delayed, consumption, and that will impact the business environment. The third level is even the second, in between the macro and the micro, is the meso, and that talks about the interaction between or among the firms or businesses themselves. So you only push the cost you've acquired to me, and then I will push that to the other businesses. So it's a very complex situation, but the only solution or anything that will signal something coming out better is when we look at the performance of our macro stability. So macro cannot be totally removed from how businesses will be performing in Nigeria. So it's not a surprise, as it were. You cannot have a very optimistic or improved business performance in Nigeria when the inflation is at this high, and the interest rate too. We don't know what will happen now, whether the central bank will maintain that or jack it up. But you can see that you may not see anything coming down,
right?
Because that would be disastrous.
Yeah, because it is quite incredible. You see most developed economies already cutting interest rates and nearing their inflation targets. Some have surpassed their inflation targets, like the UK. So I'm quite jealous of those countries. But when we look at business cycle, you have the peak, Then you see when it's going down, you have recession, then there's depression, there's a trough, then some kind of recovery, then maybe expansion.
Yeah.
But it seems for the longest time, it seems we've been in that depression stage.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking, depending on where you're looking at most of this data, you know, from, I'm wondering, you know, since this government, you know, from the APC government, you know, from parts of the PDP government, we had complaints, about complaints. Do you see us leaving this cycle? Because we know businesses and economy, they move in cycles. So when do you see us leaving this particular cycle we're in? Where we're always, we're reporting inflation rising again. We're seeing revenues hitting lows, debt rising. Where's the light at the end of the tunnel?
So let's consider that business cycle. Actually, I want to believe that it may not be that appropriate to use that business cycle framework to explain what we are going through, to be sincere.
Okay.
The assumption of business cycle has nothing to do with the current heavy reform situations that we are going through. Right. The business cycle means that even when you don't have huge external shocks, things are going normally, a time will come when the aggregate demand would decline, and then it will pick up. That's why it looks so natural.
Right.
You know, that's why people can come out and say, oh, let's predict what will happen in the next 5 years in the US economy. Oh, they're going to be, those are natural movement of business, right? But what we are going through is unnatural, if I have to put it that way, because these are outcomes of serious economic reforms. And while most of the businesses also support the philosophy of these reforms, I think the approaches or the strategies are quite debatable. You can debate that. You can say, oh, government should have done one or the other. But I think to determine how long we're going to be at this level is to also go back to the macroeconomy to see how long the CBN, especially, will be able to achieve inflation targeting, one, and at what cost to interest rate. If the CBN can look, and I think it's clearer now that the CBN will start that conversation around the structural rigidity in the system beyond just using the instrument of interest rate to capture inflation. Rigidities such as you have that, the food inflation is massive. We have to improve the production on that side, and so many other business challenges. So maybe it's time for us to start looking at those monetary factors that are driving inflation. That's number one. So if we do that earlier enough, you're going to see some better performances from the businesses. The longer it takes, the longer we remain like this. And again, I think the other part is also the side of the welfare, the household. When you have the implementation of the minimum wage for people, it's going to improve the nominal consumption or aggregate demand, but not real, because the real value is already removed. So I think the situation we are now calls for us relooking into or rethinking the strategies for the reform. They are purely reforms aftermath, in my own belief. Right. And it calls for a serious look into how we can manage the outcomes.
I guess some would say, why the rush with the reforms, even though we know that, at the end of the day, the government needs to find a way to balance revenue and expenditure, and most of the things they were spending on, before now, we heard they cannot continue like that, even though we've seen some of those subsidies partially, come back. And you did mention minimum wage, and we've seen the budget proposal for 2025, and it seems like recurrent expenditure is being propped up due to this maybe 70K here, 80,000 here, depending on what states you're looking at. So definitely looking at the budget in totality, how's that going to play into trying to arrest inflation and somehow spur growth?
Well, that's a big question, and it depends on the school of thought where you belong, how you think the economy in Nigeria responds to stimulus or budget. But I think the budget is huge, the proposed one. We don't know this, of course, is going to be more than that.
Right.
Supplementary, or even this, the National Assembly adding some items around there. The budget is huge. So fundamentally, if you look at it from that macro view, it's going to drive inflation more. That's given. One, from all those frameworks that I've mentioned also, from the lowest part, consumers now have more power to consume more. Assuming the challenge we're going through now is because of the fact that people don't have the capacity to purchase, and that's why the producers don't produce more. You assume that when they have more, then producers can have, can produce more. But the producers might not be able to even meet up with the enhanced demand that will be coming up because of the structural challenges they are going through now. So I think we may have next year, at Q1 next year, January, February, March, and we may have to start looking at the critical part of the economic cost, which is inflation. So this might leave the space of the businesses alone now. It might even be a huge factor that will be affecting the household. And again, I predict that the real income of households will decline further, though the nominal income seems to be on the high because of that 70. And again, what percentage of people really are we talking that will be collecting this money? What percentage? You look at from the local government, the state, and the federal government, how many people do you have there? This might not suddenly be what the private sector will implement suddenly. So, but I foresee that the CBN needs to do a lot next year. If we go on like this, and we don't have that strong structural solution to inflation, and then we have this budget coming up, we may be reaching something very, very high that nobody really plans for.
We've heard experts talk about what the weights the monetary side is carrying, and what the fiscal side should also be bringing to the table at this point. So, in your opinion, are you seeing improvement when it comes to the fiscal side of things right now?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, I think the fiscal side has been very slow, but I think again you could see some of the signals from the fiscal side. This minimum wage is still coming from the fiscal side. Tax reform that Mr. Taiwo is still battling with is still coming from the fiscal side.
Quite a battle there.
Yes, and I think when it lands finally, the impact might be huge, to be sincere. But before then and now, the fiscal cycle is more on the longer term than the monetary. And so people feel the instant impact of interest rates, inflation, compared to government spending. The spending might take depending on the channels anyway, but might take a longer time before you can see it arresting the situation. But let's see how things go. But I think fundamentally we just need to address more of our structural challenges that we are having with business operations in Nigeria. It's huge. Sudden improvement in fiscal side might not solve this problem, really. It's huge. The infrastructural gap we have is massive. Regulations, very hard. And so many other factors that we may start looking into beyond the monetary factors. But again, 2025 will be a huge gift for us if we get it right.
Right, and we've had complaints that most of the bulk of the work is falling more on the consumers at this point. They're having to pay more, for everything. Yeah. So I'm wondering, looking at the political class, do you think at some point they would actually feel what the consumer is feeling and allow political will do what is right?
But yes, if I had to ask you that question, what would you say?
It's for you at this point.
No, just guess. I'm now the host. Now, answer that question.
You're the host now.
Now.
I don't see it.
I don't see it also. Because these are different classes of people. Unfortunately, they are exposed to different levels of economic situation. They have so many buffers they can use, but the ordinary Nigerians don't have that. They are also, most of them are also can be taken care of by whatever opportunities that come within the system. But the ordinary Nigerians don't have that. So I don't think we should look at the question of whether the senators or our leaders, if they are feeling it, then maybe they will do something. No, they don't need to feel it before they do something, and they will not feel it. And so I assume
there's no way they can.
Yes, if doing something is based on that, they will feel it, and then they will do it, then it means they won't do anything.
Or maybe just feel the pain of the consumer.
No, they can hear the pain. They can listen to the pain. They can view through channels, see people. But really, that's not the way it works, especially in this current system. And I think that's another issue entirely. I don't think they are feeling it to be what will lead to the... But I hope that the policymakers, the real policymakers in both sides of the monetary and the fiscal sides, will keep doing what they are doing and listen to people more. And then I hope that very soon we should be able to have some...
Maybe if we could all switch sides for one day. Maybe. Thank you so much. Great having the conversation with you, Dr. Olusegun Mishaki, Chief Economist, Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head straight to the markets, get a sense of what's playing out in the local bourse and global markets that we track. That's in a moment. Stay with us.